Oi, reporter. You okay? The gang's planning got you all freaked out, huh? Me too. You know, it's kind of weird to think we're in this deep with everything. I mean, you remember when you showed up here, don't you? That all feels so far away from today. You described the process of finding us like a fever dream, really. Everything was set up for it to be a normal day. Woken up, gotten ready, headed off to work. By all means, it shouldn't have been any different from any other day, really. Yet there you were, all but running for your life.
Under Ordinance 2031-16, Crow Security reserves the right to detain you. Please do not resist further.
Your therapist always told you that, in situations that made you panic, you just needed to ground yourself. Yet in that moment, it felt all but impossible. You could name 5 things you saw. The sky, the road, the buildings caging you in from either side, the moving cars and people passing by, none the wiser to the reason you were choking on your own breath. You could name 4 things you felt. The angry rain beating down against you, your soaked office clothes that clung to your skin, the bloody river of red leaking from your wrist, the adrenaline pulsating through your veins so violently it left you lightheaded. You could name 3 things you heard. The steely, robotic drawl of barked-out orders coming from behind you, the heavy thumping of shoes against the wet asphalt ground, your own labored breathing that was laced with fear and desperation. You could list 2 things you smelt. The chalky, stale air of the noble city of Prestige's downtown district, the wetness of rain that made everything smell damper, and clean even. And there was nothing you could taste. Except one thing, maybe. That awful, rancid, burning taste of bile that was creeping up the back of your throat. Maybe even the metallic tang of blood if you bit your cheek hard enough. You'd never been one to run before. Yet in this moment, it was all you felt you could do.
Under Ordinance 2031-16, Crow Security reserves the right to detain you. Please do not resist further.
That warning had been repeated to you what felt like hundreds of times at this point, yet the sound of it still caused your blood to run cold. You'd always been told that pursuits against Crow Security were pointless. Hell, you'd quite literally read and tapped word after word into articles all about petty criminals that had been stopped by their strategic security force. Never before, though, had you thought you'd be on the receiving end of all of that. To be the one out of breath and quite literally shaking as you desperately tried to make distance between you and the security guards you used to feel comforted by the sight of. Yet there you were, choking on air, terrified, and with blood leaking out of a wound you'd clawed into your own wrist. How the hell had this happened? If you ran far enough, you'd be safe, right? At some point, the guards would have to give up, have to stop chasing you, have to see all of this as stupid and just let you off the hook. And you could go home, tuck yourself in a bed, and wake up the next morning with this all as just some fuzzy memory your brain blocked out. Somehow, though, your barely working feet continued to carry you. In front of you, you watched as the road seemed to stretch on forever, miles and miles extending out towards the edge of the city. God, this is hopeless, wasn't it? There was no way to make distance between yourself and the guards if you just kept running forward. You had to change your pathing, didn't you? Find some alley to sneak into so that maybe you could catch your breath for a second and confuse the guards that were following you. As long as you didn't somehow end up ambushed by any other members of security, you'd be fine, right? At this point, you could practically feel your own deliriousness. Without any other real plan, though, your exhausted feet stumbled over the pavement beneath you, stamping through puddles as you turned yourself down a random alley, hoping for some semblance of safety. as your chest heaved and grew so heavy that your lungs ached to a borderline irrational amount. You let yourself collapse against the brick wall of the alley, sliding down to the dirty floor just a moment later. Almost instinctively, you pulled your knees to your chest, your arms wrapping around themselves, smearing the blood from your wrist onto your pants. If you weren't already drenched from rain, you probably would have cared, but currently all you could focus on was catching your breath. In all honesty, the group of security guards following you could have been a mere 10 steps away and you wouldn't have known. You were so lost, tired, and overwhelmed that it felt like your head was spinning, your own heartbeat echoing so loudly in your ears it felt as if you couldn't hear anything else. That was, of course, until you were all but immediately proved wrong.
Hiding is a form of resistance. Crow security will use force if necessary.
Whoa, they really had you running there, huh? For a second, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to keep up. Hopefully all the noise I made will keep them off your tail for a bit.
At first glance, the person who approached you in the alleyway seemed normal. They were tall and lean, clearly younger than you yourself were, but only by a few years. Their fashion sense was extravagant and a bit flamboyant, but you could see the appeal to it. The contrast of soft greens and stark blacks looking rather eye-catching. The only things that really caused you to freeze and for your pulse to drum a little harder was the cracked, respirator-like mask covering the lower half of the stranger's face, the belt they wore that rattled softly as cans of spray paint hung off of it and clinked together, and of course, the stranger's face, or more so, the lack thereof, as instead of eyes, a nose, and a stern pair of brows, there was just green. It sounded ridiculous, really, for you to say or even think that the person in front of you went as far as to lack a face, but it truly was just not there. The stranger's entire face was obscured by a smear of green, any discernible features hidden under the anamorphous, ever-moving blur of neon. It was one of the most uncanny and unexplainable things you'd ever seen. It wasn't exactly scary, but it felt unnerving. The sight of a faceless human leaving your mind on edge, unable to register if what in front of you was really a person due to the lack of face to attach the voice to.
What? Not used to having random people run up to you in alleyways? Oh, wait. Don't tell me I have something on my face. Apologies. Guess I should at least introduce myself first, huh? Name's Toust. Saw you were running from those gross security guards and thought I'd help keep them off your back. I swear, they're worse than bloodhounds.
As you stood there, words escaping you yet again, you were met with the vaguely familiar feeling of a chill running up your spine, as cool, unwelcomed liquid continued running down your hand. The sensation of it made you shudder a little before you swiveled your wrist around, tugging on the sleeve of your jacket slightly to stare at the gory sight you were well aware was there. It was far from comforting, to put it lightly. As grotesque as it was to say, it looked as if you'd carved a hole in your own wrist, which, well, you had, having torn apart the flesh with your own nails and teeth rather viciously. What was left now was a bloody mess, to say the least. Flaking layers of broken skin that had been scratched apart like a desperate animal, raw and tender flesh now writhing with pain as it was left exposed to the cold open air, and blood continuing to seep from the wound semi-desperately, the crimson-red substance becoming diluted and pink as rainwater hit it, droplets of the nauseating substance running down your fingertips and coating them in a subtle hue of red. The wound wasn't horribly large, just a little bigger than a quarter, really, but the fact that you could vividly remember the panic that had run through your system as you'd carved the wound into your own body was horrifying, really. Sure, you'd have considered yourself an anxious person before, but having anxiety this bad enough to where you'd torn apart your body with such desperation you barely felt the pain? Yeah, that was a new one.
You're bleeding too, huh? Christ, you must have had yourself one hell of a day. We should patch that up. I doubt you'll bleed out, but I can't exactly say sitting around with an open wound is good for your health. Probably best to get you inside as well. You're gonna catch a cold at this rate. Not to mention, those crow security bastards are gonna loop back around soon. I made enough noise to confuse them for a bit, but once they realize you're not over there, they're gonna start looking again. You coming or what? Can't exactly help you out of the rain if you're just standing there. You seriously don't expect me to leave you bleeding in the middle of an alleyway, right? I've got a safe house a couple blocks away with some friends. It'll give you a spot to wait out the rain and get patched up. Hopefully by then the security dweebs will have knocked it off as well. Yes, safe house. Listen, it's just a hole-in-the-wall place my friends and I go since we know we won't be bothered. I'll show it to you, and if you feel comfortable, you can stay. If not, you can march right back into the rain and forget my face. Or, I guess, not face. Ever existed. Deal? Knew you'd come around. The safe house shouldn't be far from here, just a handful of roads away. So... It's probably good that we're headed this way anyway. Told the gang I wouldn't be out too long, but, well, got caught up with some things, you know? Probably gonna get told off the moment we step inside, though, so be prepared for that. So, I can tell you're not one for conversation, but are you gonna at least tell me how you ended up being chased by a dozen security officers? I mean, not to point out the obvious, but getting chased by Crow Company while wearing a Crow Company jacket, that's quite impressive.
For a moment, you debated on not responding. To say it was a sensitive subject would have been an understatement, really. It was quite literally a wound as fresh as the one you wore on your wrist, and you didn't quite know if you'd be able to form any words to begin with. Mind still overwhelmed and spinning from everything that had happened, and tongue feeling useless and heavy inside your mouth. As Toust went as far as to point out the jacket wrapped around your shoulders, though, you couldn't help but feel a little surprised. In your mind, it was a rather minuscule detail, really. Just a dull brown canvas jacket that had the Crow Company logo and insignia embroidered on the back of it. A gift you'd been given when you were promoted from novice reporter to supervisor some time ago. You hadn't exactly expected the stranger beside you to notice it, let alone put together the fact you wearing the jacket meant you were quite literally being chased after by the company you worked for. Or used to work for. You couldn't exactly say the termination had been all that clear. You had a feeling, though, that if you stepped a foot back into the office, you'd be detained on sight. Still, though, you hesitantly responded to Toust's inquiry.
Yeah, I noticed the jacket. Crow journalism, huh? Pretty fancy. That's one of the jackets they only give to the higher-ups, too. What are you, a reporter or something? Oh, just a supervisor, huh? It's alright. I still think it's pretty cool, reporter.
You debated on correcting Toust's words, about to insist you were nothing more than a supervisor, not a reporter, but you didn't bother with it. You'd been a reporter back before the promotion that had gotten you into this whole mess, and you had liked being a reporter much more than a mindless supervisor anyway. The title had been one you remember wearing with pride, so there wasn't exactly harm in the blonde calling you that. The ease with which Toust spoke clearly irked you a bit, though. Not exactly pissing you off, but perplexing you a little. Strangers don't typically speak to one another so casually, let alone distract security guards for them or offer to take someone you don't even know the name of back to a private hideout that only you and your friends know about. Why was Toust doing this? Why bother going through all the trouble and risk? Unable to help yourself, you had to ask.
Why am I helping you? Let's just say I'm not exactly fond of Crow security either. They have a habit of messing with me and my friends, so when I saw them chasing you, thought I may as well lend you a hand. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and all that, you know? We're here! Home sweet safe house.
Your gaze filled with confusion as you realized, well, you were still stood in an alleyway. It was an alley decently far from where you had tucked yourself away to hide from Crow security, sure, but it was an alleyway all the same. Some musty, box-riddled back road that you probably would have thrown one glance at before deciding it wouldn't be safe to walk down on your way to work. On one of the alleyway walls, though, sandwiched between a half-open dumpster and a piece of abandoned steel paneling that had words you could barely discern painted across it, was a door. It was the type of door you could only assume to be a business back entrance. A thick piece of metal decorated in flaking dark paint with a flimsy steel handle you knew from looks alone would squeak and groan upon pulling down. It wasn't exactly what you would imagine when Toust said the words safe house, though thinking back on it now, hoping for it to be some sort of charming little townhouse was a bit far-fetched.
May not be the fanciest place, but it gets the job done, you know? Keeps us out of the rain and all that.
The moment the door was opened, and you were greeted with the inside of the safe house, as Toust had called it, you couldn't help but feel a little taken aback. The whole place looked a bit like a fever dream, really, with a clashing mix of warm hominess and technicolor paint splotches that littered the place from wall to ceiling. It seemed as if the place had been abandoned at some not-so-distant point in the past, the walls and floors nothing more than barren, cracked concrete that was decorated in ugly, mysterious stains. Now, though, it seemed Toust and whoever he lived with had done their best to make the place a home of sorts. The floor was decorated in an array of mismatched rugs, a few tarps thoroughly coated in paint splotches thrown in the mix as well. There were countertops directly across from you, just a few feet away from the safe house's doorway, which were seemingly being used to just collect whatever junk and trinkets the group didn't have a proper home for. Above the messy countertops, there was also a collection of nicely decorated shelves, holding books, board games, a few fake plants, seemingly anything the group could find to make the space feel a little less empty. The whole place had a rather charming feel to it, in all honesty, despite the fact that the barrenness of the building felt a bit ominous and off-putting. How had Toust and his group even managed to find this place? If you were to guess, it was probably some storage unit or gutted building someone had purchased and long forgotten about. Before you got a chance to look around or ask any questions, though, a semi-loud voice called out from a farther back section of the bunker. Toust! Your gaze filled with confusion. This new stranger was a character, to say the least. They're about a head or so shorter than Toust, though if you had to guess, they're around the same age. The outfit they wore was just as eclectic as Toust's own, decorated in dozens of different patterns and sharp contrasting hues of vibrant green and purple. Their hair had similar contrasting tones to it, half-colored a solid jet black while the other part was dyed a vibrant neon green, almost identical in shade to the blur of color that obscured Toust's face. Similar to the blonde boy, though, this stranger wore a respirator to cover the lower portion of their face. Only this boy's mask had a scribbled-on depiction of fire and an explosion on it. It definitely gave the mask personality. A personality you could only describe as incredibly cool. Probably the coolest person you'd ever seen. Oi! Don't roll your eyes at me! You thought I was cool as hell the first time we met! What do you mean I seemed like an asshole? You know what? Shut up or I'm not finishing the damn story. As your gaze flickered up to where the stranger's eyes should have been, though, having been expected to have been met with a cold, steely stare of some sort, you found yourself looking directly into just another blur of color. Only this time, instead of green, it was blue. A deep, rich blue that still had that undeniably neon-like quality to it. It was as if the navy blue of the ocean had been brightened up and used to light up the entrance sign of a nightclub, dark yet bright and just as piercing as any judgmental gaze you could have been given. The hell were you doing out for so long? You told me you were just going out to scout out new spots to tag. What, did you get distracted walking laps around the whole damn city? Leaving for that long doesn't... Who the hell is this? Toust, you've exactly 10 seconds to explain yourself before I scalp you, you absolute dumbass! What in the actual fuck were you thinking?
TNT, please, let me explain. I promise, it's not as bad as it seems.
But they're wearing a Crow Company jacket! Are you fucking insane? And they're bleeding everywhere. I swear to God, you've inhaled so much spray paint, your brain doesn't fucking work anymore!
Whoa. Less than 10 steps into the bunker, and you're already getting screamed at? Damn, Toast. That's worse than I am half the time.
As a new voice joined the fray, you raised your gaze to see a red-haired figure standing in a nearby doorway. You're beginning to see trends with these people. If you had to guess, they were all connected to Toust in some sort of way, as they all seemed to fit in the same general categories. Young appearance, being relatively fit and seemingly in their late teens, elaborate fashion styles, with this new stranger's outfit being a bit more on the casual side, yet still so elaborate you could tell they must have altered certain parts of it themselves. Face-shielding masks, all of which were different modules of respirators, decorated in drawings and doodles as well as being brushed by spray paint. And of course, the inhuman lack of eyes, as this new figure stared back at you with nothing but a pure smear of red coating their face.
A non-dead person in the bunker? No, that's a first.
Shut it, fungi! Can't you see this isn't the time for smart-ass comments?
I don't know. If Toast brought them here, they clearly can't be all bad news. Plus, could be nice to have someone with some actual blood in their body walking around. Might liven up the place a little, you know?
I swear to God it's a miracle either of you lived as long as you did.
I know, right? 18 years is quite impressive in the grand scheme of things.
Where the hell did you find this nerd anyway? We don't exactly have a habit of bringing in strays. Plus, I would have thought you'd at least bring in someone not so stuck up. They look like they work a damn office job.
Hey, the reporter hasn't done anything wrong.
Reporter?
Ooh, you must have some fun stories then, care to tell?
We're not here to listen to stories. Let's get this rando patched up so Toss Bleeding Heart will shut up and we can shove them back out to where they came from.
Hey, I told them they could stay here and wait out the rain too. No point in bandaging up the wounds if it's just gonna get soaked the moment they step outside again.
Fine. Sit the bastard on the couch and I'll grab some bandage and Dusk while I'm at it.
Aw, letting the reporter sit on your bed, your generosity exceeds you.
Shut your mouth, fungi, before I tape it shut!
Yeah, that's TNT. He can be an acquired taste.
Acquired taste? He's an asshole that'll shout your ear off if you stare at him the wrong way. And we don't even have eyes.
Let's sit you on the couch then, yeah? Don't worry about getting it wet or anything. It'll be fine.
Much like the other sections of the bunker, the makeshift living room the group had set up was quite a strong contrast between warm and cold. The warmth came from the clear effort the group had put into making this little hole-in-the-wall place a home of sorts. A raggedy red leather sofa decorated with pillows and blankets, a matching ottoman that had a few patches sewn into it, more mismatched rugs. There was even a table pushed against the back wall, with a few stools tucked under it. The coldness of the room, though, came from the simple fact that, well, it wasn't a home. No matter how many people appeared out of nowhere and how easily the banter seemed to slip between them, you couldn't shake the bone-chilling coldness that came from the constant reminder that the walls and floors surrounding you were nothing but brick and concrete. As you stepped fully into the living room, though, your eyes were immediately drawn to one thing, the very back wall. It was decorated with a mural of sorts. It was quite an abstract piece, but if you had to describe it, it was like a section of a TV error screen. Neon-colored bars had been spray-painted onto the wall, as well as a few glitching bits around it. And in the middle of it all, in bold white text, were the letters FJC. You blinked at the sight of the elaborate art piece for a few moments, tilting your head at it softly. It was quite an impressive sight, don't get it wrong, and it didn't exactly feel out of place noting the several other drawings that had littered the walls, as well as the smell of painfully artificial paint that lingered in the air, but you couldn't help but wonder the significance of the art piece, as well as the letters that were painted across the middle of it. What did FJC even mean?
Hopefully it won't take TNT forever to get the bandages.
Yeah, can't say I'm thrilled having some stranger show up and bleed all over our sofa.
Hey, it's not their fault they're bleeding. And weren't you being nice to them just a second ago? Who happened to be excited there was someone with actual blood in their body around?
I never claimed I was excited. I said it might liven things up a little. Don't discredit me for a pun I put a lot of effort into. Plus, I can be happy we have someone here while not being over the moon that they're bleeding on one of the, 3 places we have to sit.
3. I'd say we have at least 4.
We have a single couch, an ottoman, and 2 stools that'll topple over any day now.
And the floor. The floor is a lovely place to sit.
I hope TNT kicks you in the shins next time you sit on the ground.
Hey.
How'd you even manage that in the first place? Looks a bit like you carved a hole into your own wrist. Wait, did you actually? Wow, and I thought I was having a rough day.
Yeah, they were in pretty rough shape when I found them.
Fuck's sake, you goddamn. Oi, you little punks! I told you to stay in the fucking room!
You told Dusk there was someone here, though. I want to see. We never have people over. Did another person show up?
You're nothing, you nosy little bastard. Just stay in the damn room. Cry, hold the idiot back.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Did I tell you to question me, or did I tell you to fucking hold OJ back? Fucking idiots can't listen to directions. I swear to fucking God, you bastard children.
TNT said someone needed bandage? Oh, that'd be you, I assume.
You weren't quite sure what you're expecting people in the safe house to look like anymore. Yet this new stranger seemed to fit in without a hitch. They wore a bulky black sweater that was cut along the sleeves and middle, sewn loosely back together with rainbow-colored thread, allowing you to see the teal shirt they wore underneath. Their pants appeared to be casual, everyday jeans, but with a pattern of abstract eyes painted along the upper thigh area. Their hair was a little shorter than Toust's, landing at about shoulder length with a distinct split-dye pattern, half of their hair being brown while the other half was a light blue. Their ears were also decorated in a dozen or so intricate piercings, and you wouldn't have at all been surprised if under the sleeves of their jacket hid a lengthy collection of tattoos. Finally, of course, were the 2 details that made you instantly know this new person belonged there. The respirator fixed to their face, gray in color with a distinct sunset pattern painted onto it, and of course, neon light blue over where their eyes should be.
Yep, Dusk, this is the reporter.
Found them on the side of the road and took them home like a stray puppy.
I took them back to the base because they were injured and being chased by Crow Company. I thought we could help.
They're wearing a Crow Company branded jacket. How do we know they won't report this back to their boss and potentially put us all in danger?
Because they were running for their life and they were bleeding. Wouldn't you want to be saved if you were bleeding out in an alleyway?
Their wrist is injured, yes, but I highly doubt there's any risk of them bleeding out.
Oh, shush your face.
Apologies. I'd offer you painkillers if we had any, but we don't keep first aid supplies in the bunker.
I'm gonna fucking lose my mind one of these goddamn days.
Ha! Told you I'd get out. No door can hold me.
Before you had a second to question what you had heard, though, a new figure all but bolted into the living room, tripping over their own feet as they did so. The stranger was different in a way you hadn't exactly expected. Sure, from looks alone, they definitely blended in with the rest of Toust's group. Bright black and orange clothing with a plethora of shiny accessories, tattoos peeking over the collar of their shirt showing an intricately drawn-on collection of fruit-bearing flowers, a respirator-like mask with a rainbow strap to carry it around their head. The only thing that shocked you so much was, well, they looked so young. Sure, Toust, TNT, Fungi, and Dusk were all younger than you yourself were, but the others at least looked decently grown up. Freshly out of high school, if you had to guess. The figure that had just barged into the room was young. Middle school age, maybe? If you really had to guess, they'd probably just gotten out of their preteen years. And yet, here the kid was, dressing like all the borderline adults around them with tattoos and no eyes. The kid had no eyes. Instead, just like everyone else around them, there was just a blur of color. This time the hue being a vibrant neon orange.
Hi, so you must be the person Toast found, huh? God, it's so cool to have someone new in the bunker. I'm OJ. You've probably met my annoying older brother, TNT. Oh, I don't think you've met Cry, though. It's like my best friend. A little shy, but we're working on it. Toast is pretty cool, too. Kind of the leader of this little crew of ours. Fun guy's here, of course, too. You'll like him. Everyone likes him. Real funny and stuff. And of course there's Dusk, but you kind of have to be around for a while before you get to know him. They're kind of...
Alright, that's enough damn yapping out of you. Already told you to stay in the room, which you didn't do. Least you could do is not talk the reporter's damn ear off.
Oh, I was just getting started, though. We were in the middle of a good conversation.
It's not a good conversation when you're the only one talking, dunce.
Such a crouch.
Hi.
The group in front of you was a fascinating one, to say the least. Made up of people you could only describe as outcasts, yet they all matched together perfectly. Like a puzzle only made out of lost pieces, or an abstract piece of art where all the paint had been thrown at the canvas yet somehow made a coherent pattern. Green, dark blue, red, teal, orange, and purple. Yes, as you looked over TNT's shoulder, there was another person, one final boy that looked to be around the same age as OJ. It was hard to describe, but this new figure's demeanor was incredibly coy, as if it was determined to sink into the background and not be noticed by anyone else. It dressed similar to everyone else in the group, with a dark gray leather jacket that had a bright, multicolor studded collar, pastel green and blue headphones that hung around its neck, and chestnut brown hair that was tinged purple at the ends and cut into a shaggy mullet. Yet the stranger's eccentric dress sense didn't match the way it held itself at all. The brunette's shoulders were hitched up and tense, wrinkling the fabric of its heavy jacket. Its hands were shoved gracelessly into its pockets, as if it didn't quite know what else to do with them. And of course, the boy was staring directly down at the floor. At least, that's where you assumed the stranger's gaze was fixed, as of course, like every other member of the strange group, this newest figure had no face. Instead, its mouth and nose were covered by a respirator that was decorated and painted on stars, and its eyes were covered in a smear of purple void.
Well, since Cry About It and OJ are here, we have the whole crew. Now we can call this a proper family meeting, where we all get to meet the reporter.
You say that like we're keeping this damn brat, and not some new member of the crew. They're a charity case you took in because you're too damn nice for your own good.
Oh, shush. Even if they're just staying for a little bit, it'll be nice to get to know them. Be a good host and all that.
Yeah, we haven't even properly introduced ourselves yet.
What, you want us to go in a circle and say our names and a fun fact about ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
What is this, a kindergarten class?
Hi, my name is OJ, and despite the name, I'd actually say oranges aren't my favorite fruit. I feel like limes are just a bit better. Definitely a fan of citrus, though.
I'm Fungi, and I like mushrooms. Wowee, ain't that surprising?
You can call me Dusk, and I like reptiles.
I'm Cry About It. Or just Cry. I like drawing.
My name's TNT. Yes, like the bomb. But no, you're not getting a damn fun fact out of me.
And I'm Toast, though you already kind of knew that, didn't you? As for fun facts, I took a class on how to make a charcuterie board once. That was kind of neat.
Toast, shouldn't the new person introduce themselves too? Just calling them reporter feels a bit mean.
No, we don't need to know their damn name. They'll be gone the moment the rain stops. Just calling them reporter is fine.
Oh, we're not using names anymore? Just job titles? I want to be vaguely known graffiti artist, 1 of 6 then.
Shut it, Fungi. You know what I meant.
Oh, sorry. Would you prefer I call you and Toast disgraced high school dropouts instead?
I said can it. As TNT and Fungi bickered back and forth, you couldn't help but find 2 specific words in the conversation sticking out to you. Your mouth moving before your brain could stop it as you questioned what they meant by graffiti artists. Huh? Oh, yeah. We're graffiti artists. What? Did the tarps drenched in spray paint not give it away?
Or the fact every wall in this place has been tagged.
Toust, did you really not tell this nerd anything on their way here?
We talked about the important stuff.
Oh yeah? That stuff being?
Their jacket.
You talked about their damn jacket? Not the reason they were running from Crow security. Not why they were bleeding. Not about the fact we don't have faces! TNT's rigid tone brought a certain question back to the forefront of your mind. One that had been brewing there for quite a while, yet you'd been too intimidated to ask. What even were these people? Could they even be considered people?
You want to know what we are?
A few different reactions came from the group in response to that question. Some, most notably TNT, seemed to tense up, almost as if offended by what had been asked. OJ and Fungi grew a little less bubbly and playful, the younger of the two raising a hand to scratch at the base of their own neck while Fungi simply shifted their head to face the ground. Dusk held their head up just high enough to see how the situation would play out, but it was quite clear she had no intention to speak. Cry About It seemed to only shrink in on itself further, the brown-haired boy wrapping its arms around itself and going completely silent. Toss seemed to be thrown a little off guard, but also seemed to be the only member of the group who wasn't entirely repulsed to answering the question.
Well, you see, we're... Ooh.
Tell us why you're bleeding and in the Crow Company's bad books, and we'll tell you what we are. You can't help but feel a little taken aback by TNT's words, any possible response escaping you as you simply sat there shocked for a moment. Part of you wanted to write off the whole story as being a long one there wasn't enough time to even begin explaining, but that would honestly just be a bold-faced lie. The story of how you'd gotten there hadn't been long at all. In fact, it'd been so comedically short, your entire life seeming to go from a state of completely fine to torn apart in a mere few short hours. Still, though, you couldn't help but feel like it was a tale you should keep close to your chest. TNT's offer, though, had been a tempting one. So, you decided it'd be best to explain yourself, even if just vaguely. Maybe you could trade a vague explanation for one of the group's own. The summary you give the group is a short one, to say the least. The tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of what had happened to you. Still, each of the faceless figures listened intently, seemingly fascinated by how you went from such a mundane person to being dropped into such an intense situation in less than a day. You find yourself tripping over your words, all but constantly, and by the time the explanation came to a close, you were gnawing at your bottom lip, and your leg was bobbing up and down on the ground. You weren't quite sure what you were scared of, being judged, being called a liar. None of it quite made sense to you, but as silence hung between the group, you found yourself holding your breath.
Well, that's quite the story. The Crow Company claimed they were just promoting you and then planted a damn chip in your arm. That made it feel like you were hearing everyone in the building you worked at. I'd say you're crazy, but I have a feeling you already know that.
You're not crazy, you dumbass. That's far from the weirdest claim ex-Crow Company employees have made. Plus, if the Crow Company plugged you into some weird-ass technology, wouldn't you pull that out of yourself the moment you could?
If it meant they'd chase after me for God knows how long, then probably not.
Liar.
I guess we have to answer your question now, huh? See, I guess you could say we're ghosts of sorts. Not quite alive, not quite dead. Kind of that middle ground, where you see the world, but the world doesn't quite see you.
You'd been plagued by a lot of questions that day. Dozens even. Questions you never thought you'd end up asking yourself, yet somehow that answer confused you more than anything else you'd been told. Ghosts. Faceless ghosts with nonsense names, a knack for vandalism, and a hatred for the company you used to work for. Your gaze flickered down to your own wrist as you tried to put the puzzle pieces together in your brain. None of it made sense to you. Had you hit your head or something? This all had to be a hallucination, right? A joke, maybe? A painfully immersive daydream you'd been trapped in for hours? Yet as the bloodied bandages wrapping your wound stared back at you, you were made painfully aware that flesh didn't ache this badly in dreams. The rain stopped. We should get them out of here. They're all patched up now, and if they don't leave soon, they'll be walking home in the dark.
Yeah, you're right. I'll walk them out of here. Come on, reporter. I'll see you around, okay? Uh, maybe next time we can meet when you're not on the run from your crazy ex-employer. Take care, alright?
With that, you stepped out of the stale air of the bunker, the wet asphalt making a soft splat noise as your feet hit it. You weren't quite sure how to process everything you just learned, in all honesty, whether it be that ghosts were apparently real, or that people could have their eyes stripped away into nothing but color. Regardless, as you stepped away from the safe house, the unclean alleyways of Prestige greeting you like an old friend, you couldn't help but look back at the unassuming safe house door, almost as if the stories of the people that resided within it were calling out to you. And, as you stared, part of you swore you saw a slight blur of neon green stare back at you. Maybe one day your curiosity would be quelled and you'd learn the true stories of the ghosts that lied behind that door.
Project Ghostie is an audio drama written and produced by Dell and Jackie. Support for our project comes from listeners like you, enjoying our show and listening in to our newest episodes. Enjoy our content? Feel free to leave a like, comment, or even a little subscribe if you want to. Want more Project Ghostie content? Find the links to our socials in the description. Today's fun fact: Toast's favorite dinosaur is the Pedopina, a silly little raptor. Ain't that neat?